Well, good morning and welcome to one of our third way dialogues on this glorious Thursday morning. I am so happy to be back with you. I'm Antjuan Seawright. For those I have not met, I am a senior visiting fellow for Third Way, and thank you all for joining us here for one of our conversations. I start today as a really emotional day for many of us, especially those of us in South Carolina. It was 6 years ago, around 8:16 p.m. when a 21-year-old white supremacist by the name of Dylan Roof stepped off Calhoun Street in Charleston, South Carolina, and went into the Mother Emanuel AME Church. From there, when others expected him to worship and pray and love as the AME tradition would have it be, he decided to turn to his .40 caliber pistol, and he shot and killed 9 angels, known as the Emanuel 9. And so that happened 6 years ago today. And so we start this conversation with a brief moment of silence, thinking about the 9 people and the 3 survivors from that massacre that happened in Charleston 6 years ago today. Amen. So today we are so honored to have 2 of my dear friends, and Bakari Sellers will join us shortly. He is a little late due to some flight complications. His plane was a little late, but he will join us shortly. But I'll get right to it. I am so happy, and I feel like a blessed man to have Sean Patrick Thomas to join us for, I think, this critical conversations. I do not have to tell you who Sean Patrick Thomas is because you know him. You've seen him in Cruel Intentions. You've seen him in Save the Last Dance. You've seen him as an activist. And most importantly, you've seen him in the movie on Barbershop. And I laugh every time I see Sean or every time we get together because we've been doing this thing called activism for some time now. And every time I see Sean, I get political PTSD. And I remember being on the campaign trail with Sean over the years, and every single time we have needed Sean to step up to help save this country, whether it was the fight in 2016, or whether it was the fight in 2018, or whether it was the consequential election in 2020. He has always been there, and he does not mind leaving his family. He does not mind leaving his career to do what's in the best interest of this country. And I'm just so grateful for his friendship. I'm so grateful for what he means to me personally. And most importantly, I'm so grateful for what he's been willing to do to help save this country. So Sean, thank you for your friendship, man.
Absolutely, Antjuan, man. I'm so glad to be here. So happy to see you again. I can't wait to see you again in person. I'm just glad to be anywhere where I could try and help problem solve and help try and figure this out, you know, because there's so much that that's within our control to improve our lives, that I want to do everything that I can to step up and help out. So it's not a problem at all. And it's something that I feel honored to do. And I feel honored that you asked me.
Sean, you know, I apologize because I know you're in LA. I'm in South Carolina. So it's 10 something here in South Carolina. It's probably like 7 o'clock.
Right. I mean,
8 a.m. in the West Coast. So
right.
I know you're my friend if you got up that early for me in Third Way. So thank you.
No doubt. No doubt.
I could not convince Bakari Sellers to get up that early, and we're on the same time zone. So I appreciate that. Sean, you know, some time ago, shortly after the 2016 election, I caught a lot of hell for something I said, but I'm unapologetic when I look back now, and I was unapologetic then in particular. I said that Black men going forward will be the most consequential voting bloc in this country. Mm-hmm. You remember, and I remember, we made our rounds all around this country, going to barbershops, going to gyms, going to fraternity meetings, showing up at worship services, community meetings, you name it. We were trying to make our rounds to engage and turn out Black voters. Mm-hmm. After the 2016 election, we learned that 13% of Black men voted for the Republican candidate at the time, who went on to be the president of the United States, Donald Trump. 13%. Fast forward to tape, we made our rounds. We did similar events. We were in the midst of COVID, an awful pandemic that was disproportionately impacting people who look like us. But we did similar. We did a lot of virtual events by way of DNC, et cetera. Fast forward to tape in the 2020 election, although we won, there was a number that I paid especially close attention to, and that was some exits have it at 19%, but the most consistent number I saw was 23%. 23% of Black men voted for Donald Trump. So you have the 2016 number and the 2020 number. The most disgusting thing and frustrating thing is the fact that that number increased. Sean, from where you sit, what did you hear in 2016 that you think that could have been a trigger for Black men wanting to turn out for a candidate who made no apologies about his feelings, in particular those feelings that would have impact, I think, towards Black men?
I mean, to be honest with you, I didn't see a whole lot or hear a whole lot that Donald Trump was actually doing or saying that was attractive to Black men. What I saw was a lot of antipathy and a lot of bitterness towards the Democratic Party. You know, this overall idea of mistrust, this overall idea of feeling like, hey, you know, we've been supporting this side all this time, we've been voting this side all this time. We're not getting the results that we demand, that we deserve, that we expect. And so it just seemed to me, just from my point of view, like almost like an act of spite in a lot of ways. And also I think, you know, we discussed earlier, you know, the misinformation, disinformation about, you know, how I heard a lot about how, well, you know, Hillary Clinton is just as racist as Donald Trump. So what's the difference, you know? And that's all, you know, that internet misinformation. So I think that's what I heard a lot of, this stuff about Hillary Clinton and child islands and stuff like that, like just crazy internet conspiracy stuff that people really believe. And I think those two things, based on my experience, are combined that might explain that number.
Sean, let's fast forward the tape, because I mentioned 2016,
yeah,
and we're all still sad about 2016, but we had a lot to rejoice about in 2020, at least on the surface. But when you peel back the onion, the results indicate that we have a lot of work to do. As you were moving around virtually and talking to people in your networking circles, whether it's in LA, with some of the stars that you associated with, or whether it's just good old fashioned grassroots, grass tops, high touch, as we say in the South, campaigning. What do you think was the trigger point that made people think that it was a good idea to come back out? Because you got to remember, to set the stage, this was after he called NFL players who took a knee because Black people were being mishandled at the hands of law enforcement. He called them son of bitches. This was after, you know, some of the language and rhetoric he had used about African countries being S-hole countries, and some of all of that, the presidency of Donald Trump defined, and yet you had an increase in the number of Black men who voted for him. What did you hear bubbling up on the ground that a lot of us missed?
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, what I've heard a lot of was just an overall mistrust of, quote unquote, the system. So whether it came to, you know, how the virus started and where the virus came from, and I don't trust the vaccines and the cops, and there's just an overall aura of mistrust. And again, I would have to say that what I was hearing was that, well, at least I know the devil I'm dealing with. Like, yes, he's a racist. Yes, he's a devil. Yes, he's a scoundrel and somebody that, you know, I can't get behind emotionally, but at least I know what I'm dealing with. At least I know who he is and what he is. And there's something about that in a reverse kind of twisted way made him appealing to some people, because they felt like, well, at least I know what I'm dealing with. At least he's keeping it real. At least he's being honest about what and who he is. That's a perverse logic, but I heard a lot of that.
Sean, let's talk about issues for a minute, because sometimes we think policy drives the needle, but what I just heard from you is sometimes personality that drives the vote.
Right.
Cancel out this idea that we need to be engaging in so much policy. But it seems to me, if you go to the barbershop, it's more about personality. Talk about, I see the barbershop as the black man's sanctuary. Talk about what the fellas talk about in the barbershop and how that translates to politics. Because honestly, that's where I do the majority of my polling to get a feel for where our community is.
Well, it's like I was saying, it's like a lot of brothers, the brothers that I talk to, they don't trust anybody and they don't trust anything. And so it's about building trust. We need to see results. We need to see somebody, and like you said, it's not an issues oriented thing, but it needs to be like, we need to see emotion and we need to see passion behind the things that matter to us. Like when you watch political coverage right now, you see, yes, the Democratic Party, they're pursuing voting rights. Yes, we see the Democratic Party, they're, pursuing climate justice and all that stuff. But we're not seeing, in my opinion, enough passion, enough like hair on fire, like just a rabid pursuit of justice and righteousness. That's what brothers need to see. What brothers see in the barbershop, in my opinion, is people going through the motions, doing politics as usual, just kind of being part of like an unending cycle of just sameness. And they want passion. They want a crusade. They need something to get behind.
Sean, I'm going to go through some stats with you, and I want to dig deep on some of these issues while we wait on Bakari to join us. Unemployment is nearly twice as high for Black men than white. Black men have the highest unemployment of all race, gender groups in the country. In other words, Black men are more likely to be unemployed in the United States than any other group. When we talk about the Black family, why do you think that's important?
Well, when we talk about the Black family, the issue is that we need to feel like we're getting a fair shake. And I think a lot of the time when we go into an opportunity to try and get a loan for a business or trying to apply for a job, we in our guts know that we're not getting a fair shake. And so it kind of depresses the overall enthusiasm level about, well, no matter what I do, it doesn't make a difference. No matter what I do or what I say, this is what people see, and it doesn't matter. And so it contributes to, in my opinion, to an overall hopelessness and overall just a sense of powerlessness. That's what we need to fix. That's what we have to get at. And the unemployment numbers are just a small indication of that, in the sense of we have a system where people assume that we're not trying as hard because we don't get the same results, in terms of unemployment. And we feel that and we sense that, and I think we resent it.
When it comes to this issue of education, I have a piece coming out Saturday morning that only about 28% of Black men ages 25 to 29 have a bachelor's degree or higher, compared to 30% of Black women, 40% of white men, and nearly half of white women. When we talk about education in our circles as Black men, it's not framed in the same vein or the same way it is with other constituencies. How should we be trying to connect the politics from your seat as an activist and a grassroots, grass tops fellows? How should we try to connect the dots between education and the politics to make sure that turn out to results at the polls?
Well, I think that we need to do a better job of connecting with people in terms of seeing how the policy decisions affect our children from the beginning when they're at school. Like when a Black boy and a white boy engage in the same behavior at school, but they're punished differently. We've all experienced that. We've all seen that. We all know what that is. That's something that can be policy driven. That's something that everybody can identify with. We need to talk to people on that level. When a Black boy has trouble with a certain math problem and a white boy has a problem with a certain math problem, the Black boy, he might have a learning disability. He might have a learning issue. While the white boy, he just need to practice some more and brush up. Everything that we do, even from a young age in the educational system, is viewed through a different lens. And it has to start there, in my opinion. And when we get people engaged and understanding, look, our boys are not being treated the same from they're 5, 6 years old in school. We got to start it there and then take it from there. Because what happens is when we're treated differently when we're 5, 6, 7 years old in school, it can start a cycle that it can be very difficult to get out of. It can get us into a cycle where school is not a place where we feel wanted or valued, or people expect less of us. And so it begins us on a path where we can end up at a disadvantage educationally, and that would lead all the way up until, potentially hoping to go to college. Like by the time we get to college age, we're just like, that's not even for me. And it's because of a lack of support and a lack of belief from early on.
Sean, there are systems in this country that have been created, in my view, just the gospel according to Antjuan, some of those systems were never intended to protect or look after the best interests of people who look like us.
Correct.
And so when I write that will come out Saturday, 1 in 3 Black men can expect to go to prison at least once in their lives. And statistics indicate that 1 in 1,000 Black men will be killed by the hand of police. We now know that we are 3 to 4 times more likely to be killed or mishandled, i.e. treated like a second-class citizen.
Yes.
Due to the hand of police. When we think about those issues and we think about we have yet to move the needle, what do you think that means for the future of showing up at the polls or getting Black men to be engaged and involved in politics? Because we have yet, Sean, to get a police reform bill through a Democratic Congress.
Right. What I would say to that is that we need to see what happened with the Derek Chauvin trial times 1,000. We need to see justice every single time we're mistreated. Every time we're treated like second-class citizens, we need to see justice. Like this thing that's going on in North Carolina just in this past couple months with Andrew Brown, like we're not seeing the tape. Things like that. Like we need, like I said before, to just be running around with our hair on fire the way Bakari Sellers is with that particular case, we need to see justice every single time we are mistreated. And that's what I think is going to go a large way towards translating towards, political energy on our side, because we rarely see justice with these issues you were talking about, police harassment, police, mistreatment, misconduct. And we see it. We see that we're not getting any results. We see that we're not getting justice. Until we see that, I don't think you're going to see Black people really get involved and engaged.
Sean, from your point of view, what do you think are the top issues those of us who are in the Democratic Party, from helping people get elected and motivating people, what do you think the top issues are, in particular when it comes to Black men?
I would say the top issues are economic opportunity, things like the opportunity to get a loan to start a business, the opportunity to, get internships, to get into a field that, that you might want to try out, like things like AOC was talking about, people can't work for the wages that people make as congressional staffers, because basically you need to already be rich to be able to work as a congressional staffer, because you don't make any money,
Right.
Like we need opportunities like that where people recognize, look, because of systemic racism, because of historical patterns, there's certain areas of endeavor that Black people are locked out of. Daddy can't write us a check for a year's worth of rent in DC, to work at Congress. So things like that, like recognizing the areas where we have a historic disadvantage and doing things to help even out the playing field. I don't think Black people are asking for a handout. I don't think they're asking for free stuff. I think they're asking for what's fair. And I think that if we can communicate to Black men that we are actively and effectively evening out the playing field, I think that's what's going to make a big difference.
What else would you rank as your top let's say that's one. What else would you rank as your other top issues that we, in particular, those of us in the Democratic umbrella, need to be focused on? Because this midterm election, Sean, arguably will be more consequential than the one you and I worked in 2018, give us this majority, and could be more important for the sake of the Congress, because Biden's still going to be president.
Right.
As the 2020 election. So what other issues you think are those under the hood issues that we need to lift up the hood and take a serious look at in order to make sure we decrease that number of Black men who show up to vote for Republicans?
Mm-hmm. That's a tough one, man, because when I talk to people, people are just so, stubborn about not wanting to trust the political system. Mm-hmm. We were talking earlier about, personalities and emotions and not as much issues, mm-hmm. And I feel like that's so much the case. I will say, though, that I think that what Black men need to see, I think, is justice. We need to see people going to jail for treating us like second-class citizens. We need to see more rich white people going to jail when they commit crime. Mm-hmm. We need to see those things. We're not seeing justice in general across the board. I also think that things like Flint, Michigan, with the water and environment, Black people living next to factories and breathing bad air. Like, we need to see justice in this in terms of climate, in terms of people need to go to jail over that Flint water issue. Like, things like that we need to see.
Speaking of things we need to see, I just saw New York Times bestselling author, CNN commentator, lawyer, activist, husband, father, my dear brother from Denmark, South Carolina, where they do have one traffic light, but it's not as handsome put together as Swansea, where I grew up. Bakari Sellers. Bakari, what's up, bro? Unmute yourself.
Man. I'm glad to be one in the number, man. Sorry, I'm in the Newark airport, had a delay, but appreciative of the work that you're doing, appreciative of the work that the organization is doing. And I'm glad to be here. I can see with you and Sean Patrick, I'm still the most handsome person on this Zoom call. So I appreciate it.
No doubt.
Bakari, we started this conversation with a moment of silence, of course, because 9 people killed by white supremacists in Charleston, South Carolina, 8:16 p.m. 6 years ago today. But we transitioned to talking about what I believe to be, and you and I have talked about this in private, the most consequential voting bloc in the country, Black men. As you travel the country, as you have conversations, as you represent families who've had to bury their sons because they've been mishandled or killed at the hands of white law enforcement, and when you're in the courtroom, what do you think the top issues are facing Black men in this country?
I mean, that's a good question. I think that one of the things we have to do a better job of in analyzing what the issues are is listening. I think for far too long, we've been talking at Black men and not listening to Black men enough. So that's first and foremost. I think the top issues are issues like Sean was talking about as I was coming in: environmental justice issues, pocketbook issues, educational issues. Black men, I think it's somewhat disingenuous when we begin the conversation and end the conversation with criminal justice reform. I mean, look, most of the men that I talk to on a daily basis are trying to figure out how they can care for their families, raise their families, and they really want plans to directly impact their bottom line. And we haven't treated this group of voters with the appropriate attention and care that we need to. But a lot of that requires us actually meeting them where they are and listening to their needs and desires like we do other subsects and groups.
Bakari, 13% in 2016 voted for Secretary Clinton. Voted for Donald Trump against Secretary Clinton is how I would frame it. I've seen polls indicate 19 to 23% voted for Donald Trump, which means against Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. What do you say has been the driving factor to see those numbers shift away from voting for what we know to be the right interest of Black men in this country?
A lack of attention. I mean, it's what happens when you don't pay attention to any demographic group. When that group feels as if you don't care, when that group doesn't feel acknowledged, or doesn't feel as if there's a policy concern. I think that there's been a lot of emphasis placed on Black women, and rightfully so. But I also think that a lot of that energy has to be placed on what is the second largest voting bloc for Democratic voters, which are Black men. And I think that we have to do a better job of engaging those voters, not just around election time, but throughout the process. I'm interested to see what happens in midterm elections, because for far too long we've underperformed. I mean, all we have to do is go back from 2008 to 2010. And we have to begin to put together tangible plans to improve the plight and lessen the load of many of our brothers in the streets, man. I mean, look, I in the barbershop is where we have our best gospel. Hearing the initiatives and ideas, hearing the questions that people have about just how to improve their bottom line are all things that I wish more people listen to. And so I think that when you don't care, when you turn your back, or when you don't engage until election time, I think you begin to see those shifts. And Donald Trump made a targeted effort through disinformation and misinformation, and using a few of Sean's brothers like Daryl Scott and others to go out there and try to pick away some of our brothers. I mean, you look at Lil Wayne and Kodak Black and some others who, Lil Pump, many others who became ardent Trump supporters for whatever reason that may be. And I think that distraction also caused a great deal of misinformation in our communities.
Yeah.
We do have a question and answer feature. So those who are tuning in, first of all, we're thankful for you, but please shoot a question in the chat if you want. Sean, Bakari touched on a sensitive point, but it's a real good point. When I move around the country, and I remember being in Georgia for the special election, moving around a good bit, trying to turn out voters for Warnock. And also, what I heard from some Black men is that Democrats only uplift and care about Black women, as if we don't matter. There's no focus or attention. You move in different circles than I do, because you're a star, you're Bakari, but I'm low on the totem pole. But what do you say to people to Black men who really feel that way? They feel like they have no place in the Democratic Party because the conversation and the oxygen is sucked up by the conversation about the loyalty, rightfully so, of Black women.
Well, I think that what happens is that I think there's a degree of brothers don't like to be shamed. That's not a persuasive tactic. To say that the sisters are doing this, so like, what are you doing? What I think Black men need to understand and remember, especially right now, like in terms of just as a pure marketing issue, is that when I go to the barbershop now, when I walk in, where there used to be 6 dudes, now there's 2. And I said, well, where are the other 4? And they said, well, they got their stimulus check and they started their own shop. They got their stimulus check and they started their own salon. I think that's fantastic. I think we need to do a much better job of marketing to Black men. Hey, you know what? This is something that the Democratic Party got behind and made happen. The Democratic Party created, at least where I live, like untold numbers of new Black businessmen, new Black entrepreneurs that started their own business from the stimulus money. That's something that we need to talk about constantly, something we need to advertise, something that we need to like really wear on our sleeve and be like, look, we are getting things done. And I don't think we're doing a good enough job of advertising the things that we're accomplishing right now.
So as you say what to that, because obviously this president and this administration hit the ground running very, very quickly. Right. And they've put some troops on the ground to help spread the good gospel. But obviously that's not penetrating, because I'm starting to hear the newness of the car wear off, so to speak, when you move around and move about, in particular talking to us. And not just Black men, but I would say Black and brown people in particular. So what advice would you give to the majority in Congress, House and Senate, as well as this White House, about trying to effectively message to these constituencies that we're going to absolutely need in 2022 to hold the line?
I would say
you got to meet people where they are.
Yeah.
No, you got to meet people. Oh, go ahead, Sean.
No, go ahead.
No, you got to meet people where they are, man. And I think that's the biggest problem. I mean, we have to begin to be out there. One of the things that I did, this is going to sound silly, but when I was running for SJ president in Morehouse, I came up with this idea pretty much from basketball that we were going to flood the zone, right? We wanted to overload the zone. We wanted as many people, as many voices all saying the same thing in the same area at the same time. And I would encourage, I mean, how many times have you woke up on your way to work, turned on the Ricky Smiley morning show, turned on the Breakfast Club, or turned on whatever you listen to in the morning and heard your member of Congress articulate what's in the infrastructure bill, or what's the difference between the John Lewis voting rights bill and HR 1, or what is in the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act? I mean, how many times have you heard those voices on the news and shows that we listen to the most, or the YouTube ads? You know, I as a father, you become so understanding of YouTube ads because that's what your children have, right? They got their YouTube playing on their iPad, and you see all these ads pop up. How many ads have you seen targeted to our communities? Or you know, it's just the fact that we have to have a more concentrated effort, and sometimes that messenger can't be Joe Biden. Right? Joe Biden may not be the best messenger in our communities. I mean, sometimes that's me, sometimes that's Sean, sometimes that's you, Antjuan. But we have to do a better job. Everybody only wants surrogates during election season. I was looking at a question from one of my friends who's in the Georgia State House, talking about the listening tour that they're doing. I believe it's the Georgia State House. Kudos to everybody who's in the state legislature walking. I am the best type of I'm the best type of legislator there is, which means I'm retired. But I did see that you're doing a tour around Georgia. That's good. I mean, we need to be at all the high school basketball games and football games. We need to be in all the barbershops and beauty salons. We need to be in all the church basements. We need to be dealing with all the fraternities and sororities, the links, everywhere, meeting with these civic organizations. But we also need to make sure that sometimes we are not the right messengers carrying the message. Sometimes we have to find those people who have been in the community, vested for a very long period of time, who've been doing the work, not replicating the will, and sending them back into their own communities armed. And then we're going to need more of us playing that high level game. Again, I have echoed this frustration to the Black Caucus directly, saying that we have to do a better job of getting them on Black media, talking about Black issues and doing it often.
Yes.
You know, Sean, Bakari brought up an interesting point. It seems that you're the exception to this, but a lot of your colleagues, you famous people, you only show up when there's a presidential election 2 or 3 months out to get on TV. And
well, let me not let you. I can't let you do Sean like that, because they're only asked 2 to 3 months out from election season. But it's not that they only show up, but they only asked. So okay,
to that
we
point,
got to ask them now.
No, to that point, that's a good point. But why do we have to ask them when they know they have a platform, when they know they have strength, they know they have a voice? Most of the time, I don't have to ask you, Sean. I see you doing stuff I don't even ask you to do, but I see you engaged and involved, whether it's a tweet or whatever. What can we do other than ask? What can we do to help more people like you understand that you can't take a day off. You can't take a play off. We know you got work, but when you're not working and dealing with your family, there are things you can do, whether it's online or in person, to help stay engaged and stay involved, because you have a platform to reach people that Bakari and I would never reach.
Well, I think that's a tough ask. It really is, mainly because people here, even us, even the brothers, we're like, we don't want to get too far out in front of, you know, what the current wave is. You know, a lot of people that I talk to, they're like, hey, you know, yeah, you know, of course Trump is terrible, but you know, I don't want anybody to associate me too closely with Joe Biden, because you know he's problematic. I don't want anybody to associate me too closely with Kamala Harris because you know she locks up Black people. I don't want anybody to associate me too closely with like the system, because I don't want anybody to think, you know, I'm a tool of the Democratic Party. Very image conscious to the point where we do nothing. And my argument to that is always, well, you got to do something. You know, I don't understand doing nothing. There's one side that represents our interests, generally speaking, more so than the other side. So put your energy there. I don't think anybody thinks that, you know, if you go out and talk about climate justice, that you're a tool of Joe Biden. Like, nobody thinks that. But I think people don't want to be perceived that way. And I think we have to find a way to maybe get people like me to get behind the issues that they care about more so than a party or a particular politician.
Bakari, I know you've spoken this gospel a couple of times when you talk about the issue of cannabis and so forth, how it has penalized us, but it could, I guess, expand our economic horizons if we do it the right way. Touch on some of those issues that you think we can turn the corner on that's created a crisis, but we can really turn it into an opportunity.
Yeah, no, I think that I am a cannabis entrepreneur. Sounds weird to say because I'm also a criminal defense lawyer. And that is it frustrates me beyond no end to see that I still have clients who are being enhanced for their criminal sentencing because of previous marijuana charges. I still have clients who get pulled over for simple possession of marijuana. And I have operations in Oregon, Arizona, Oklahoma, and soon to be New Jersey. I was just having a conversation with Al Harrington. Al Harrington from New Jersey has one of the biggest Black-owned cannabis ventures in the entire country. It's called Viola after his grandmother. Brilliant brother. He was just on my podcast this week. And we talked about this issue. I mean, the fact that if we approach this issue and not from a criminal justice perspective as much as an economic equity perspective, that we could help not only gain voters, but bring new people into our struggle, our issues, and also improve the plight, lessen the load, and create wealth in our communities. We're talking about making sure that the states who are coming online, like New York is next, and New Jersey, making sure that they have initiatives whereby the people who've been penalized and punished because of marijuana in the past now have an opportunity to get the licenses, et cetera. And so this is an important issue. This is something that, I find myself, Antjuan, pushing against the White House. I am way more progressive on the issue of marijuana than the White House is, and trying to get them to reframe and understand that this is not just a political issue, but this is an issue that truly matters. But, whether or not we're talking about marijuana, or whether or not we're talking about voting rights, or whether or not we're talking about environmental justice, or whether or not we're talking about educational opportunity, I mean, we have to frame these issues in the right way. And I think Deshaun was right. Like, take the personality out of it. Take the Kamala Harris and Joe Biden out of it. Take the Democratic Party out of it. And just talk about we can win on issues. We literally can win on the issues and on the policy. We just have to be progressive and go big. And I think we have to do that with marijuana as well.
As we kindly come to a close here, because this is getting good, but I don't want to keep y'all two important people. Voting rights. If I say Black men, and I've said are the most consequential constituency, then I truly believe voting rights is the most consequential issue of our day. We see legislation after legislation being filed and passed to silence and suffocate our voices at the voting block. What do you say to Black men who may not play political ball the way we do, but may not even realize that they can wake up out of their sleep and a law could be passed in their state where you can't give them water in the line or food in the line while they wait to cast their vote? What do you say to those people, Sean, when you're at the barbershop?
Well, what I love about being a Black man is that we have so much pride. And if we can let brothers know that these people are trying to take some of your manhood from you, they're trying to take some of your citizenship from you, something that you have a right to. If we find a way to make that clear, that people are trying to take something from you that is given to you by God, your right to vote in this country, that can motivate brothers to kind of like shake out of it and be like, wait a minute, I'm not gonna let myself get punked like that. Black men have so much pride and so much a sense of our own power that we just need to find a way to let the brothers know that we are in the process of people trying to take our power away from us. And I think once that flip is switched, we're going to act, and we're going to act in huge numbers. We just have to figure out a way to communicate that.
Sellers, you say what to the boys under the tree in Denmark about voting rights?
Look, when we meet out on the stoop and Pop bring those Bud Ice over, I hate Bud Ice. I gotta stop drinking that stuff with my boys. But I'm like, we don't have to live like this no more, man. We made it. We don't have to live like this no more. Look, if your right to vote wasn't so important, they wouldn't work so damn hard to take it from you.
Right.
I mean, that's the fact. And I think that Sean was right. Like, this is our power. And, I don't think that the line, do you know people died for this right? That don't work no more. As much as it means something to us, that's not a line that works anymore. But having ownership of your own dignity, having ownership of your own pride, being able to dictate the terms of your existence, and being able to cast a ballot either for someone who gives you the benefit of your humanity or against someone who doesn't want to recognize it. I find it funny. This is decently nerdy of me, but I find it funny that some of the boys in Congress want to give us Juneteenth as a federal holiday, but then don't want us to study the reason why we have Juneteenth in the first place by banning critical race theory. It's like it's understanding that some want to give us our dignity and some don't want to give us our humanity, and being able to cast that ballot. But as Sean said, it's a power construct. And I like talking about that even more. I'm gonna dig into that a little bit more with the fellas, see if they like it too.
But this is my last thought, and happy Father's Day early to both of you. I so value your friendship, and I admire the work you do as your first job of being father. So to Sean and Bakari, happy Father's Day. But Saturday we celebrate, we were reminded of the Juneteenth holiday, which is now will be a federal holiday. But also Sunday we celebrate Father's Day. Father's Day, Black men, and Juneteenth. Wrap that up in a bow in your own words, Sean Patrick Thomas.
The most thrilling and consequential thing I will ever do is to be a father. And what I feel like is my number one job in my life that I will ever have is to make sure my children and my son in particular, if we're going to talk about Black men, is that he understands that there is no one that can stop him from being what he's fully meant to be, and to not let anything or anyone stand in his way. And I feel like when you talk about Juneteenth and when you talk about Father's Day, you just need to have a sense of where we stand in history, have a strong sense of how far we've come, and really understand that that's nowhere near far enough. And I take a lot of pride in teaching my son what racism is and what discrimination is and what unequal treatment is. I'm not one of those people that's going to tell my son, hey, if you work hard, you'll get everything that comes your way. It's that simple, because it's not that simple. I teach him, look, you could work hard and try your best and still not get ahead. And this is why. So how are we going to deal with that? That's what I think about when I think about my son, when I think about Juneteenth, just like where we are on the, on the continuum of history and how much further we have to go.
Sellers, you are uniquely positioned to talk about both these things. I was there with you through your wife's pregnancy and through your journey to fatherhood. And I know your family's history when it comes to civil rights, not just in South Carolina, but around the country. And I know the work you're doing now. Frame this up, give some background color from your perspective.
Yeah, no, I think that Sean was right. And it's a little different for me now being a father, and understanding history and my place in it. It's one thing to be a son. It's another thing to be a father and to have someone who is dependent upon you. I will say that I asked two very simple questions, Antjuan. When I think about this question that you posed, it makes me think of how far have we come and where do we go from here? And those two questions are so simplistic, but I think that they're the root questions that we have to answer on this journey. My number one goal is to protect my son. I want to protect him. I want to pave the way so that he can go out and be free to love, free to pray, free to live, free to pursue any dream that he wants to dream. Right now, though, my son is 2.5 years old, and I'm writing this in a book that my next book that I'm doing. But you know, Black men are looked at around 9 or 10, maybe even sometimes younger than that, of losing that childlike attitude. They're adorned to be grown men at that time by society. All we have to do is look at Tamir Rice and others. And so I had this clock on my head that I probably have about 7 or 8 years where I have to change the world so that my son can live and be free to get the benefit of humanity from everybody. And I think Juneteenth reminds us that we've made a lot of progress in this country. We just still have so far to go.
The two of my big shot friends, I'm so grateful for y'all. Thank you, Sean, for getting up early on
Absolutely,
the West Coast to join me in Third Way. Sellers, thank you for making the sacrifice. I know you're in the airport. I know you're moving. I know you're doing the country's work, and I appreciate you taking the time. And we have work to do, fellas. And it's one thing, as my uncle, Representative Terry Alexander, just texted me, it's one thing for us to do it on the Zoom, but we've got to take these conversations and our actions up under the tree, to the car wash, to the barbershop, to the fraternity meeting, to the gym, even to the nail shop when we go hang out and at least speak to the ladies. We've got to take these conversations all across the country to reach people where they are, as you laid out. So thank y'all. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you, Third Way, as always, for giving me the platform to have these consequential conversations. We'll see you soon.
All right. Good to see you, man.
Thanks.